Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 605. I'm Tom Cagley, your host. Today, we have an interview with Jodie Kane. Jodie and I discussed product owners and retrospectives. Jodie is a passionate, value-driven servant leader with a unique, energetic style that brings out the best in people and opens space for teams to be self-organizing, high performers focused on delivering customer value and getting things done. She has spent a lifetime honing her servant leadership skills, inviting people to work together, creating space for human engagement to develop, innovate, self-organizing, value-driven teams. Are you ready to discuss product owners in the retrospective? It's time for the interview. Jodie Kane, welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
Thank you, Tom. It's great to be here.
Jodie, we originally met just a couple of days ago in a text chat.
Yes, celebrating World Retro Day.
Meeting somebody in a text chat, I guess, is pretty appropriate for the time frame that we live in, right? Where everybody's locked in their own houses, basically, or close, depending on where you live.
I agree. Any ways that we can make connection these days. Video conferencing is great. Phone calls are great. Texting is great. But taking that initiative to make connection with people or join in on all these different things that are popping up is so important for us all. And, we want to keep ourselves from feeling isolated, but we also want to help others not to feel isolated as well.
Absolutely. Speaking of isolation, when we were texting or chatting, actually in Slack during the World Retrospective Day event, one of the things that we were conversing about was whether or not others, and let's say like the product owner, should be invited to a retrospective. And you had some good, real examples of that in action. So why don't you tell the story, and then we can dive in with a few probing kind of questions.
Okay, that sounds great, Tom, because that topic does come up. And when people say, should others be involved, if we go back to the Scrum Guide, based on the Scrum Guide, a product owner is part of the sprint team. The sprint team participates in retrospective. So if we just go to that purely, my answer would be yes. And there's one other reason where I answer yes for the product owner specifically is because from my viewpoint, the product owner cares deeply. They care deeply about their product or project. They care deeply about their team. And being a part of retrospective is a way that they demonstrate that deep caring and makes a big contribution. So in my personal opinion, retro isn't just for the development team, but there may be times where the product owner shouldn't be included, or there may be times where others should be invited. So I'd like to talk first just about the story that came up about when a product owner maybe shouldn't be included. And I'm going to tell the story of Sam, fake name. Sam.
You changed the name to protect the innocent here.
I did.
Or perhaps the non-innocent.
And this story actually happened enough years ago, I want to say close, maybe 8-10 years ago, that some may have forgotten about it or moved on to other things anyway. But Sam was the product owner on a great initiative that we had going on. We had a really strong development team and really good group of people. Very early in the agile transformation of this organization. And so there wasn't a lot of experience to build on, and everybody was learning as they went. One of the things that I noticed in our retrospect, and I was in the role of Scrum Master with this team. And one of the things that I quickly noticed after having a few retrospectives where Sam was present some of the time, and there were a few that he missed because he was called to other meetings with upper leadership or for whatever reason, that the retrospectives when Sam wasn't present were very different than when he was present. When Sam wasn't present, the team was very engaged. They had a lot of input. There was a lot of interaction, a lot of conversation, and they really came out with some good actionable items to improve the process and improve actions that we were taking. When Sam was present, the team tended to be very quiet, and people didn't bring up. I had to do a lot of pulling teeth to get creative to get people to speak up. But even then, I sensed a very cautious speaking up. So I decided to meet separately with the team at one of the times that Sam wasn't able to attend, and asked them about that in particular, and said, why is it so different when Sam isn't here? And basically, one of the first answers I got is, well, we don't want him in our retrospectives. So I wanted to ask more questions to understand why, and even the comment of our retrospectives, where they weren't considering him a part of our, and also to just really understand what they were feeling, because I had seen it happen. And they gave me some answers that that went something like this: he knows all the answers. He's always thinks he's right. He's really good at condescending on us in his smooth way. He doesn't listen to what others have to say, and nothing is ever his fault.
Ouch.
So, yeah. So I had seen it and witnessed it. So I understood that feeling. And I knew that Sam was a really nice guy. He was an athlete, and he was very energetic and inspiring, and he had a lot of really positive qualities, but he was very controlling. And so I decided to get together with Sam and have a lunch with him that week, and just chatted with him about the retrospectives, and if he wanted to be a part of that or didn't, and if he wanted to, why he wanted to. And he said that he really wanted to be a part of that because he felt like he could really influence the team, and he had some great ideas about things that was going to really help them to work better, and the retro was a good place for him to make those things happen. So I commented back to him, and I said, so you really have an agenda, your own agenda for retrospective? And he kind of chuckled and said, well, sure I do. That's my role. I'm the product owner. I should have an agenda for things. And I shared with him that the concept of retrospective, he should be leaving his agenda at the door, because the agenda for retrospective is more about building trust, building safety, being able to let everyone speak, and collaboratively hearing how can we improve and getting that input from everybody else. And he kind of sat back and chuckled at me, and he said, I've been doing this for a long time. Like, I know how to deliver good software products. I'm really good at it. I've been doing it a long time. These people could learn a lot from me. And so I asked him I said, I'm going to have to be really frank with you. The development team would prefer if you don't participate in retrospectives for a while, because they're not able to be totally comfortable and share openly when you're present. And his whole face turned bright red, and he just said, I don't even know what to say right now. And then he leaned it forward and he said to me, they can't do that, can they? And it was really funny, his reaction to it. And I said, but I think there's some things that we can do to fix that if you want to, but it's going to take some change on your part. And maybe even joining in one retrospective and just being there with the agenda to listen. Just to listen. Don't even contribute to that one. just listen to what's going on. He also had a good heart. And while, he came from a very command and control, he had been in the service at one time, he was used to, people telling him exactly what to do and him having a responsibility to tell others exactly what to do. And that can be very effective in the right situations. But he also had a really good heart and really wanted this to work and wanted to contribute to it effectively. So we did carry on then, and we ended up. I met with the team again, and we decided to invite him. We talked. He listened and he participated lightly. But what we also brought up is, we've got an elephant in the room. We've got a challenging situation here where the team is not comfortable with you, Sam, and not feeling safe to speak up to you, and you feel like you have some things that you think they should be doing that they're not, and that this is your opportunity to bring that in. So let's just get this all out. And we ended up doing a retrospective where we kind of went. I call this one a retro, and we retrospect on our retrospectives.
Okay, so, I buy that.
Yeah, so I took some of the items that we had in the last session that where Sam had joined us. I took some of the items that we came up with. There were like 5 or 6 items. And this was actually even before I was on the Scrum Master of this team, of these 6 items. And I put them up and I asked everybody to take a few minutes and score them. And they used a scoring of if you put a 5, we rock. We've totally rocked at this. And I had, a different label for every number down to a 1. We forgot all about it. We don't do anything. And so everybody went and put their scores up and did a quick average, and the scoring was very similar. So there weren't a lot of surprises. Everybody pretty much knew we didn't work at all on this one. And so then we focused on those. We talked about why we rock at the ones that we rock at. And then we spent some time focusing on the ones that weren't touched. And a lot of those were those items that Sam really had an agenda of how he thought the team should do it. And the team really felt like they weren't listening to him. And so we were able to really turn that around. And Sam got better at listening. I can remember over time that we actually even came up with a trigger word that the team would use for Sam during different meetings, or if something would come up where Sam was speaking in this tone that he would get that started to shut everyone down, that they created a trigger word, because we weren't all co-located, so we couldn't like throw the little stuffed Nemo at him or something like that some of the co-located teams can do. We came up with a little trigger word that would kind of help him to be aware that he had missed that, and or he was kind of taking over things, and we saw a lot of improvement. And the team ended up actually reaching a point where Sam participated in every other retrospective. So there were still some things that the development team felt like they couldn't speak openly about or comfortably about when Sam was present. So we did that for a period of time. And as we because he was now meeting with the team every other, it gave some time for them to still feel like they were really making progress on some things, but also to have that time to start building trust with Sam. And so over a period of time, then we did that. I want to say we did that for probably 4 sprints. We were on 2-week cycles, and for probably 4 sprints where we alternated. And then we reached a point where Sam was then included all the time. And it was a big shift with the development team, but having that safety, that trigger word where they could speak up instead of just shutting down, was one of the things that made a big difference as well.
If the team, and I'll use the big team here, right? the team hadn't been able to establish that level of emotional safety or psychological safety, whichever term you want to use for that, what do you think the outcome would have been?
So that's a really good question, Tom. And so when I think about some other teams that I've been on where a product owner was maybe only had 2 or 3 hours a week to give to the team, and retrospective wasn't the top priority. It was more important. We need them in refinement. We need them in, sprint review. We need them in those things. And so it definitely influences the team in a different way. First of all, when the product owner isn't fully dedicated, but also when the product owner doesn't participate in those things. They miss out on things. And so in the instance with Sam, if Sam wouldn't have been open to moving in a direction that he would be more listening, that he would take on more of a little bit of a servant leader type approach and engagement with the team and be a part of the group rather than over the group, then I think that as a Scrum Master, I would have continued to encourage Sam to not participate in the retrospectives because they were really limiting the team making improvement if he was there in the beginning. I think that it would have, the team actually got to a point where they were just rolling. They were like a train that was just chugging along and fueling that, and it got really rolling. I think it would have slowed down the team because when you don't, when things don't come together like that, and you don't have a cohesive team that's able to have that trusting, safe place to be able to give input and participate, it's going to slow things down. And so I think that if Sam would have been like, look, if this team isn't willing to listen to me, then go ahead, let them do their own thing. It would have really slowed down the productivity of the team and had a really negative influence on it.
Or worse yet, he might have actually tried to push them into listening to him and shut them down. So, I mean, silence is almost a violent act in some instances. Do you think that our great Scrum overlords contribute to this by I guess calling the development team, the Scrum Master, and the product owner, versus, even though they are all part of the team, having names for different parts of the team which sound less teamish?
But I think for me, it feels like the Scrum Master and the product owner are called out as roles on the team because those are the two roles that you can call out. The development team may consist of multiple different kinds of people. So you could have business analysts and developers and AI developers and Java developers and various types of QA people, whether it be automation or a variety of things. That's the group that you can't call out and name each one. Right. But everyone, there should always be a Scrum Master and there should always be a product owner. So I think there's such a misunderstanding about why that's talked about the way it is, and people just take it as it is. They see the word developer and they think, oh, development team, we just need developers. We need a Scrum Master, product owner, and developers. And, I can remember earlier, years ago when it was like, we don't need BAs anymore because in Agile, there aren't BAs on the team just because they weren't listed. And thankfully, nowadays, people do consider BAs as very important as part of that development team.
And testers too, right?
Exactly. But I think that there's a reason that those two roles are called out separately. They need to be there. And the rest needs to be filled in based on what the need is.
So when you were going down the path of Sam saying, hey, I've done this for years, I know how to do this, One of the things I get afraid of in that circumstance, especially with any form of Agile, is that somebody did something once, it might have worked in the context that they're in, and then suddenly think, hey, it worked once, it's going to work forever. And in this case, right, where you see the word dev team or development team and you just think it's all coders and testers are over here, separate and distinct, they'll go down that path because that worked for them once, and it isn't necessarily the way it should be practiced. Shouldn't have been practiced that way then, but it's ingrained now, and they keep going down that path. Luckily, it didn't sound like that was the example, with Sam, right? But it could have been.
Exactly. I agree totally. And I think that's probably part of what made me fall in love with Agile in the very beginning when I first learned about it back around 2000, is the humanness of it. Mm-hmm. So in this particular case, this worked. Now, some of the background there is that Sam and I had worked together for some years before that. We had a relationship. We had fought before. We had disagreed. We had to reach agreements on things. We had been through different struggles because, Sam was a great guy, but this thing that was happening within our Agile team, our Scrum team, had happened previously when we weren't doing Agile. So he kind of had some of that reputation, and I had been in a role at different times where I had to have honest conversations with him. So we had some history there that helped it. But I would say that it isn't always going to work. There's, and that's why even, you hear this often. The Scrum guide is a simple way of doing things. It's a simple guide, but yet it's very hard to do. And part of the hard part is that humanness part. We try something, it works well. We think, okay, I'm going to do it this way from now on. But we're humans, and we work with different humans, and different people move in and out of the team. And so if we take things with that approach, we can glean, wow, this something worked really well. Maybe I'll try that again. But we can't expect that it's going to work. We have to look at it and say, wow, I tried it. I tried that thing that worked before on this now. It's not working so well here. I need to shift. I need to, what do I need to pay attention to? How do I need to look at this differently? And I had another product owner that I worked with, and use a name for her, Sally. She was the product owner. There were actually 3 product owners because this was a very large project, very high profile for a financial organization. The main product owner was, like many product owners are, he was an AVP of a business organization, and when he was assigned product owner of this item, nothing was taken off of his plate. But he had these 2 great managers who were SMEs that he initiated them as co-product owners together with him. Great people, worked really great with the teams. The developers, testers, everyone had high regard for them. They could join Retrospective periodically, but not frequently. So because of the relationship and the trust that the team had with these product owners, there were times even when something would come up in a retrospective and the team would say, since Sally isn't here today, could we put this one on hold and talk about this when Sally is able to join us? So we ended up doing retrospectives sometimes at different times throughout the sprint because we had to work with Sally's schedule, and that worked well. And so if we would have just said, oh, we aren't, doing, it was an agreement that we came up with Sally, is that since you can't join us for retrospectives, how about if we try some different approaches? And when we did it that way, we were able to, have her in when we needed to, but the team also trusted her. Mm-hmm. She did a lot of things to build confidence in the team and and build relationship with them. And so even though she couldn't be in every single retrospective, because of the other things that she did, it built that safety and trust for them to engage with her and want to have her involvement in helping improvements in some areas.
Do you think safety and trust, not just for the product owner or Scrum Master, but all of the team members, safety and trust are the glue that holds team members together?
I would say that, yeah, I think I could say that, Tom, because, when I start to think of a couple other things that I would throw in there, I could always tie every one of those things somehow back to safety and trust. There's something that shifts in all of us when we feel safety and trust. And it allows us to be vulnerable. It allows us to take risks. And sometimes as we're building that safety and trust, we're cautious in how vulnerable we are. But when it continues to build, it just, lets us take a risk, make a failure, bring up a silly question, all of those things. And when those things all start happening, you can really pull all of that back to basically that foundationally there's safety and trust within the team.
Jodie Kane, this has been really wonderful. If you woke up tomorrow morning and someone handed you your favorite caffeinated beverage of choice and a magic wand and said that you were able to fix any two problems associated with retrospectives, what might those two be and why?
That's a good question. One of the first things that comes to mind is that they have to happen at the end of the sprint. For me personally, retrospective is a part of everything. I do retrospective sometimes at the end of a workshop. How did this workshop go? How can we improve it? I've had teams, if you think about often how sprints go, at the end of a sprint, the team is racing to get everything done, to prepare a nice review and demo. And then they're getting ready for planning right away. And so the retro becomes something of, let's do this quick and get it over with so that we can say that we did it. Maybe we'll come up with one thing we might work on. But people aren't relaxed. So I've had times where I've moved the retrospective to the middle of the sprint. Didn't do any harm to us.
Right.
It still created continuous improvement. So I would take away from that and just say, don't confine yourselves to it has to happen at a certain point. And the other thing that I would say is if, especially I guess when I think about a Scrum Master or anybody that's on the team that's willing to speak up, if it's not working, if you're not improving, if you're avoiding them because you feel like there's a waste of time, somebody speak up and say that. Take that risk, be vulnerable, because it will make the difference in a team being amazing if you make your retrospectives work well. So somebody needs to speak up.
Jodie, how would people continue the conversation?
I'm on LinkedIn. That's a great way to connect. Yeah, and I have to be totally honest that while I enjoy Twitter and I jump there sometimes, I personally try to keep my my connections to something manageable. I try to take time every day where I'm not electronically plugged in, and I can't seem to keep up with all of them. So LinkedIn seems to be lately the thing that I'm frequent the most. Twitter a little bit, Facebook a little bit, but LinkedIn is where you can contact me the most. And then through the groups like Agile Philly.
I will have the LinkedIn contact information in the show notes. Jodie, this has been really wonderful. This was exactly what I was hoping for when we were texting away the other day. And it's like, this would be great. So, as you know, I open up the platform. Is there anything that you want to promote at this point? The podcast has been around for 14 years, so as I tell people and occasionally leave it in, selling your car on eBay, probably not the best use of this time. But, the platform's yours if you'd like.
I don't have anything specifically to promote about myself, but what I would promote is I encourage anyone that's working in with Agile teams to get involved with some kind of a group that's also doing it. Our Agile Philly group is just so great. I also participate in Agile Central PA. I was lucky enough to be living in Connecticut when Dan Mezek had Agile Connecticut. And that was my first networking group that I was a part of for Agile work. I left every one of those meetings just feeling like this is what I want to do in my life. And so I encourage people to get connected to others who are doing it, because it just can make such a huge difference. And we all learn from each other, and you'll get as much as you give.
I will echo that 100%. And obviously for me, right, I met you through an Agile Philly event. I meet others, and again, part of why I do the podcast is not only to share that with people, but there are some ideas that you saw me jotting down in my notebook as it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And we all take those things away, and that's the goal, right? To be better, to help those that we're helping be better. So we can all help each other.
Yep, excellent.
Thank you again for participating on the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
My pleasure, Tom, and thank you for what you do.
In Reread Saturday News, this week we tackle Chapter 3 of Tame Your Workflow. Chapter 3 is incredibly important for understanding the overall book. Chapter 3 is titled Flow Efficiency, Little's Law, and Economic Impact. In your reread, spend the time needed understanding how the themes noted in the chapter title interrelate. In the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 606, we'll feature our interview with Marco Faella, author of Seriously Good Software, Code That Works, Survives, and Wins. Marco and I discuss quality, craftsmanship, and how being a passionate coder and academic mixed. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?